His Majesty had carefully selected several noble ladies for Crown Prince Pei Heng. Yet he insisted on choosing his crown princess through a lottery. My father accidentally discovered the lottery box had been tampered with and secretly replaced it. In the end, I was chosen and married into the Eastern Palace. I thought my years of devotion would finally be rewarded. But instead, I was plunged into a heart-wrenching nightmare. On the day his concubine Ruanli passed away, Pei Heng stumbled drunkenly into my chambers, his bloodshot eyes blazing with hatred. Su Wanyue. Had you not switched the name slip, Lear would have been my rightful consort. She wouldn't have died in such misery. It's all your fault. Only when his icy fingers clamped around my throat did I finally understand, from the moment I was chosen, my tragic fate had been sealed. When I opened my eyes again, I had somehow returned to the day of the consort selection lottery. My eyes snapped open, cold sweat soaking my back, nearly knocking me off my feet. The suffocating sensation from being choked still lingered, blurring the line between dream and reality. Miss, what's wrong? Inxing, my maid, supported me with concern. I dug my nails into my palm, the pain jolting me further awake. Lifting my head, I saw my father, the Minister of Rites, about to enter the grand hall for the final inspection before the ceremony. Father! I rushed forward and grabbed his sleeve. You error? He turned, a hint of confusion in his brows. What has you so alarmed? I leaned close to his ear and whispered a few words. Father's brow furrowed deeply. Are you certain? I met his gaze and nodded solemnly. Father studied me deeply, asked no further questions, and finally agreed. Your Highness, perhaps it would be best if Lear did not attend. A soft, delicate voice came from behind. I turned to see Ruanli tugging gently at Pei Heng's sleeve, her eyes red and tearful, looking utterly pitiful. Pei Heng immediately frowned. What is it? My status is low. If I'm chosen, others will surely say Your Highness is showing favoritism. If I'm not chosen, her voice grew fainter, suddenly choking with emotion. Lear fears she cannot bear others' ridicule. As she spoke, her body swayed slightly as if about to fall. Pei Heng swiftly reached out to steady her waist. With this palace here, who dares mock you? Pei Heng's voice was sharp, yet his gaze was unnaturally tender. Ruanli leaned into Pei Heng's embrace, her eyes glancing over his shoulder to meet mine with a triumphant look. Why not? She suddenly straightened, feigning innocence as she looked at me, a mocking curve playing on her lips. Why not just choose Sister Su as crown princess? Your Highness? After all, everyone in the capital knows she's adored you for years, delivering soup to the Eastern Palace daily. The noble ladies around us all covered their mouths with low giggles, their glances flitting toward me with subtle intent. In my past life, I would have been consumed by shame and indignation at this moment. But now, I merely smiled calmly, lowering my eyes without a word. Upon hearing this, Pei Heng cast a faint glance my way. Let fate decide. In truth, Ruanli was no noble lady, but the daughter of a hunter. During last autumn's hunt, Pei Heng fell from his horse in the mountains and was injured. She rescued him and tended to him for 3 full days. Upon returning to the palace, Pei Heng insisted on keeping her by his side, even considering making her his primary consort. A hunter's daughter? Fit to be crown prince's consort? The emperor slammed his teacup in fury. Hunger. Don't be foolish. Later, the emperor personally selected several noble ladies for Pei Heng, but he proposed choosing a consort by lottery and insisted on including Ruanli among the candidates. He knelt outside the imperial study all night long before the emperor relented. Since you insist, let her participate in the selection. If she is not chosen, it shall be the will of heaven. As the ceremony commenced, the ceremonial officer proclaimed, Your Royal Highness, please draw the lot for the principal consort. Pei Heng strode forward, drew a slip from the gilded lot cylinder, and handed it to the officer. The official proclaimed loudly, "Lady Ruanli shall be the Crown Prince's principal consort." The entire hall erupted in murmurs and whispers. Ruanli covered her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. "Your Highness, is this truly heaven's will?" Pei Heng's gaze was filled with tender affection. "It is indeed heaven's blessing. Sister Su, I truly never imagined this would happen." Ruanli turned to me, her gaze shifting between me and Pei Heng. "Your Highness, how can I possibly take this position? Shouldn't I yield it to Sister Su? Heaven's will is not to be trifled with." Pei Heng shot me a meaningful glance. "Su Wanyu has her own destiny." At these words, a flicker of triumph crossed Ruanli's eyes. She feigned fragility. "Your Highness speaks wisely. This leer has been too naive." She covered her mouth with a light cough, adopting a look as if she might faint at any moment. "Your Highness, please draw the concubine lot." When the ceremonial officer presented the jade lot cylinder, my heart lurched. This scene had never occurred in my previous life. Before I could recover, Pei Heng strode swiftly to Ruanli's side. "What's wrong? Have you been standing too long?" Seeing Ruanli nod, Pei Heng scooped her up horizontally. "Li Dequan, you draw." With that, he strode toward the rear of the hall without looking back. After Pei Heng departed, the chief eunuch Li Dequan drew a slip and handed it to the ceremonial officer, who proclaimed loudly, "Lady one of the Chu clan shall be the secondary consort to the Crown Prince." The young lady from the Chu family kneeling beside me knelt in gratitude, her face aglow with delight. The other noble ladies all wore expressions of disappointment. After the ceremony concluded, the noble ladies departed in small groups. Some deliberately passed by me. Some people, after clinging to such delusions for so many years, ended up not even securing a position as a secondary consort. Indeed, all that tireless running to the Eastern Palace, now it's all for naught. If you ask me, His Highness the Crown Prince must have grown weary of her fawning ways long ago. "Shoo, keep your voice down. Her father is the Minister of Rights." After all, I let these sharp remarks brush past my ears, a faint smile playing at my lips. This ordeal, at last, I had escaped. On the carriage ride back to the estate, Father pondered for a long while before hesitantly speaking. "You err. Though I too wish to spare you from marrying into the Eastern Palace. I know you've long admired the Crown Prince. Why did you ask me to remove your name from the selection tube today?" I lifted the carriage curtain, gazing at the receding palace walls, and whispered softly, "It's nothing, Father. Your daughter simply, suddenly no longer wished to marry him." I lowered the curtain and turned to my father with a light smile. "Didn't you and Mother always say that General Liu Xiao would make a suitable match? This marriage, your daughter accepts." My father paused at my words, then patted my hand with a look of relief. "Good. Very well. I'll go inform the Liu family immediately." My infatuation with Pei Heng was likely the biggest laughingstock among the noble ladies of the capital. That year, at 7, I was selected as a princess's companion and entered the palace. During my first audience with the emperor, I trembled with fear outside the hall, my small body huddled behind a vermilion pillar, tears streaming down my face. "Why are you crying?" Young Pei Heng stood silhouetted against the light, his features as exquisite as a painting. "Now that you're in the palace, I'll look out for you." With that, he pulled a piece of crispy candy from his sleeve and pressed it into my palm. That candy was sickeningly sweet, yet it turned my tears into laughter. From then on, I followed him like a little shadow, from the imperial study to the martial arts grounds, through spring and into winter. Once, the Empress saw us and teased with a smile, "See how much this girl one you adores our hunger? I say, why not let her be your bride?" Pei Heng flushed crimson and turned his face away, but I etched those words deep into my heart. Later, when he casually praised Li's crispy candies, I'd queue before dawn to buy them for him. When I learned his headaches from official duties kept him sleepless, I pored over medical texts to master soothing herbal decoctions, delivering them daily. Those days after his autumn hunt horsefall, I fretted sleepless for nights, nearly joining the guards to search the mountains for him. The Sioux family's daughter waits outside the Eastern Palace again, the legitimate daughter of a minister of state, degrading herself thus. The whole capital mocks my foolishness, laughs at my stupidity. But they don't know that when Pei Heng lay feverish that year, he clutched my hand in his delirium, calling me you. They don't know the tenderness in his eyes when, on the day of my coming-of-age ceremony, he slipped his personal jade pendant into my hand and told me to keep it safe. It was this elusive closeness that made me sweetly indulge in a decade-long dream. Until Ruanli appeared. He began bringing her in and out of the palace, personally teaching her calligraphy and painting. He even gave her the pine soot ink I had gifted him. If she clutched her chest and frowned slightly, he would panic, rushing to summon physicians from the Imperial Medical Bureau and personally brewing her medicine. He even knelt outside the Imperial study all night, begging for a chance to let her compete for the position of Crown Prince's consort. My heart ached with bitterness and resentment. I was the one who met him first. So why did his eyes now see only Ruanli? Until the day of the consort selection lottery in my past life, when Pei Heng unexpectedly drew my name. Kneeling before the palace hall, I wept tears of joy, believing the Bodhisattva had heard my prayers and granted my wish. But I failed to notice the sudden, icy pallor on Pei Heng's face atop the dais. It was as if he hadn't drawn his beloved, but a death warrant. I sewed my wedding gown with heartfelt joy. Yet on our wedding night, he didn't even lift the veil. He merely coldly declared, "As you wished. The title of Crown Princess is yours. But don't harbor any other illusions." With that, he turned and left. The red candles burned out, and I sat alone through the night. I couldn't understand if this was truly fate's decree. Why did Pei Heng treat me so? The next day, a small sedan chair was carried into the Eastern Palace. Ruanli entered the estate as a concubine. At the concubine-taking ceremony, Ruanli wore a water-red silk gown, her fingers trembling slightly as she held the tea bowl. This humble servant offers tea to Her Highness the Crown Princess. The cup clattered to the floor, scalding tea splashing onto her silk stockings. She gasped, burrowing into Pei Heng's embrace, her exposed ankle flushing crimson. Su Wan Yue. Pei Heng's expression darkened instantly. He barked harshly. "Can't you even hold a cup of tea? Are you deliberately making things difficult for Lear?" I stared blankly at the steaming porcelain shards on the floor. That teacup had clearly been knocked over by her own hand. "Your Highness, please understand. I did not." Pei Heng cut me off, his anger flaring. Could it be that Lear deliberately scalded herself? Unrepentant. Go kneel outside and reflect on your actions. He scooped Ruanli into his arms, cradling her with such care as if she were a fragile treasure. Chaos erupted in the Eastern Palace. Eunuchs raced to summon physicians, while palace maids shuttled back and forth with medicine chests. Kneeling on the cold stone slabs outside the hall, I watched the physicians bustle about over that minor scald. My knees went numb from kneeling, and upon returning to my chambers, I developed a high fever. When Pei Heng learned of this, he merely sneered coldly, "Such a show." Days later, the Empress somehow learned we had never consummated our marriage and summoned Pei Heng for a reprimand. That night, he kicked open my chamber door and seized my chin. "You dared report to the Empress Dowager? Su Wan Yue. You truly have nerve. Well, I'll grant your wish." Before I could protest, he pinned me to the bed. His movements were brutal, like punishment. When he finished, he held my chin and forced me to drink a bowl of contraceptive potion. "Remember this, you are unworthy of bearing my child." The bitter medicine spilled from my lips to my neck. staring at the swaying tassels on the canopy. I suddenly laughed. So the Bodhisattva had granted my wish only to show me that a marriage forced by will might not end well. Later, I was banished to the most remote courtyard of the Eastern Palace. While Pei Heng's heart and eyes were filled only with Ruanli. When Ruanli was frail, he ordered the finest tonics sent to her courtyard. When Ruanli shivered from the cold, he hunted white foxes himself to make her a fur coat. Then, Ruanli fell ill. The imperial physicians declared her affliction stemmed from deep-seated emotional distress, a chronic condition beyond cure. Pei Heng kept vigil at her bedside day and night, his eyes filled with a panic I had never witnessed before. He sought out some obscure remedy from somewhere, insisting on using my blood as the catalyst to brew medicine for Ruanli. When he made an incision on my wrist, not even his eyelashes fluttered. For Ruanli, he drew blood from my wrist a total of 49 times. Yet in the end, she still died. She died when the first snow of that year fell. In his arms. That night, he kicked open the door to my bedchamber, reeking of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot. Su Wanyue. If you hadn't switched the name slip back then, Lear would have been my rightful consort. She wouldn't have wasted away. It's all your fault. He clamped his hand around my throat, his grip so fierce it nearly crushed my windpipe. I gasped in agony, yet not a single sound escaped my lips. In the suffocating dizziness, I finally understood everything. It turned out his insistence on selecting a consort by lot was merely to give Ruanli, born of humble origins, a legitimate chance to be chosen. He had long tampered with the lot cylinder, only to have my father inadvertently discover it and secretly swap the slips back. Because I was the one selected, he assumed I had bribed my father to interfere, causing him and Ruanli to miss their chance. So in this lifetime, to prevent history from repeating itself, I instructed my father not to concern himself with the box's contents, only to retrieve my name slip. Since he had schemed so tirelessly for her sake, I would grant him this one wish. 7 days after the ceremony, my mother entered my chamber bearing a sandalwood box. She slowly unfolded the betrothal documents and gift list upon the table. Her eyes sparkled with contentment, as if thoroughly pleased with this match. Lu Chen is a young man of upright character who has admired you for years, a most suitable match. I lowered my gaze and smiled faintly. Daughter leaves all arrangements to mother. Having lived this life anew, I've grown indifferent to the tangled threads of love. To marry someone who understands my needs is already a blessing from heaven. If that person happens to treat me with genuine affection, it is an extra gift. Just then, Ginkgo lifted the curtain and entered. Miss, the brocade trading house has received a new shipment of fashionable jewelry. Would you like to take a look? I nodded. Very well. I can pick up the fabric I ordered the other day while I'm there. The moment I entered, my gaze fell upon a gilded jade hairpin adorned with emeralds. Miss Su has such discerning taste. The shopkeeper carefully lifted the hairpin and presented it. This design was rushed here by express courier from Jiangnan. You won't find another like it in the capital. I took the hairpin and held it up to the bronze mirror. Indeed exquisite. Wrap it up. Just as I was about to pay, a cold voice suddenly rang out behind me. Su Wanyu. It has been 7 full days. Where have you sent the calming decoction you were preparing for this palace? The bronze mirror reflected Prince Pei Heng's tall, slender figure. His brows were tightly furrowed, and faint dark circles lingered beneath his eyes. Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince. I turned and curtsied. This humble maiden has been occupied with wedding preparations these past days, truly unable to spare the time. Pei Heng's gaze fell upon the hairpin in my hand, and his expression softened considerably. Oh, you've begun preparations so early. Just as I was about to respond, Ruanli's sweet voice suddenly interjected. Oh my. This hairpin is truly lovely. Sister Su, she said, her eyes fixed intently on the hairpin in my hand. This hairpin is quite to my taste. Might you be willing to part with it? I gently stroked the tassel dangling from the hairpin's tail, Miss Ruan. When purchasing items, it's customary to follow the order of arrival. I have already claimed this hairpin. Ruan Li's eyes instantly reddened. Biting her lip, she looked at Pei Heng, Your Highness. Pei Heng frowned, his voice deepening. It's merely a hairpin. If Lear likes it, simply give it to her. Why be so particular? Seeing I had no intention of yielding, he flung a bag of gold leaves onto the counter. This hairpin is mine today. Cold sweat beaded on the shopkeeper's forehead as he rubbed his hands nervously, torn between choices. Not wanting to put him in a difficult position, I placed the hairpin back into its brocade box. Since Your Highness insists, I relinquished it. Gratitude flashed across the shopkeeper's face. Miss Sue, you're here to collect the fabric you ordered a few days ago, correct? He retrieved a bolt of crimson silk embroidered with golden phoenixes from the cabinet. It's all ready. Made exactly to your specifications. My fingertips barely touched the silk when Ruanli leaned in again. This crimson brocade is truly exquisite. If made into a wedding gown, why must you always covet others' possessions? Miss Ruan? I cut her off coldly. This is the fabric for my custom-ordered wedding gown. I've already paid the deposit. Pei Heng, who had been observing coldly from the side, suddenly lifted his gaze at these words. His eyes fell upon the crimson brocade, a flicker of surprise passing through them before settling into understanding. Su Wan Yue, he murmured, a faint smile playing on his lips, tinged with amusement. You are merely a secondary consort marrying into the Eastern Palace. Such a deep crimson is unwarranted. He paused, adding condescendingly, however, if you truly desire it, I may permit you to wear it once during a private banquet in the Eastern Palace. Ruan Li's fingers dug into the crimson silk at his words. Yet she dared not speak. She could only look at Pei Heng with a look of grievance. Your Highness must be mistaken. I smiled as I traced the phoenix pattern embroidered in gold thread upon the silk. When did this humble maiden ever intend to marry into the Eastern Palace as a secondary consort? Pei Heng froze, the smile on his face abruptly stiffening. What did you say? I met his gaze, enunciating each word clearly. This servant is to marry Lu Chen, son of General Ding Yuan, with a palanquin borne by 8 bearers, through proper betrothal, as his principal wife. Pei Heng's pupils contracted sharply. He seized my wrist with such force it nearly crushed my bones. Impossible. I drew your name. The Ministry of Rights has already recorded you in the Imperial Register. How dare you? Your Highness. Watch your words. I wrenched my hand free. The concubine you selected was clearly the young lady from the Chu family. Pei Heng's face drained of color. He staggered back half a step. No. This can't be. As if suddenly struck by a thought, he barked. Someone. Bring Li Dequan to me. Moments later, Li Dequan scrambled in, stumbling and crawling. Before he could steady himself, Pei Heng yanked him by the collar. On the day of the selection, whose name was drawn for the secondary consort? Speak! Your Highness. Li Dequan trembled like a sieve. It was Chu Wan, the eldest daughter of the Minister of Revenue. Chu, you personally approved the memorial. What about Su Wanyu? Pei Heng's voice cracked. Su. Miss Su. Li Dequan stole a glance at me, utterly bewildered, then forced out the answer. Miss Su was not selected. Pei Heng froze in place, as if struck by lightning. How could this be? I clearly. Pei Heng murmured, his gaze toward me dark and unfathomable. His departure was unsteady. As the hem of his brocade robe swept over the threshold, he stumbled, nearly falling. Your Highness. Ruan Li rushed forward to support him. But the moment her fingertips touched Pei Heng's sleeve, he violently flung her away. The force was so great she staggered back several steps, her back thudding against the shop's door. Her eyes stung with pain, but she dared not approach again. Clutching her handkerchief, she stood rooted to the spot, watching Pei Heng walk away without a backward glance. In those tear-filled almond eyes, a flicker of venomous resentment flickered. That night, the Eastern Palace burned bright with light. The night watchmen trembled as they reported that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince had flown into a terrible rage for reasons unknown, smashing every porcelain piece in the hall. The next morning, Pei Heng suddenly stormed into the Su residence. His eyes were bloodshot, clearly having gone without sleep all night. The servants dared not stop him, watching helplessly as he charged straight through to the rear courtyard, stopping only when he stood before me. Su Wanyu. He was panting heavily, as if he had rushed here in haste. This palace sought an edict from His Majesty this morning, permitting the appointment of an additional secondary consort. He lifted his chin slightly, as if this were a tremendous favor. This palace intends to take you as a secondary consort. If you are willing, I may make an exception and permit you to wear the imperial crimson upon entering the residence. Your Highness jests. Crimson is the color reserved for the principal consort. A secondary consort must never usurp such honor. I bowed slightly in respect. Pei Heng's eyes lit up. So, you accept? Your Highness misunderstands. I was merely discussing court etiquette with you. I lifted my gaze to meet his, a smile playing at my lips. Besides, I am already betrothed to Lu Chen. Impossible. He seized my wrist, his voice rising sharply. I refused to believe it. Unhurriedly, I drew the gold-embossed betrothal letter from my sleeve and unfolded it slowly before him. Pei Heng's pupils contracted sharply, his grip on my wrist unconsciously loosening. He staggered back half a step, his face turning pale by the second. How could this be? He muttered, snatching the letter from my grasp. He flipped it over and over, examining it as if searching for a single trace of forgery. Su Wanyue. He snapped his head up, a flicker of panic flashing in his eyes before he swiftly reclaimed his haughty demeanor. Even if you're betrothed, do you think Lu Chen can protect you? His father is merely a lowly military commander, while I am the crown prince of this dynasty. Your Highness. Choose your words carefully. I interrupted calmly, meeting his gaze directly. The Lu family has served as generals for 3 generations. My grandfather fought alongside the founding emperor to expand our borders. My father quelled the Northern Frontier Rebellion, for which His Majesty personally bestowed the title Dingyuan upon him. Are you questioning the emperor's honors? His expression stiffened, clearly unprepared for my invocation of the sovereign. Just as the standoff intensified, my father hurried in. After bowing, he remarked gravely, Your Highness, the Crown Prince's unauthorized intrusion into a subject's residence seems rather improper. Pei Heng snapped back to his senses, snorting coldly. The Minister of Rights displays quite the official arrogance. Does he presume to lecture this prince as well? Father bowed with measured dignity. Your Highness. Should you have business? You may formally submit a calling card. Such unauthorized intrusion, if reported, would reflect poorly upon your reputation. Pei Heng was silenced, his expression shifting between anger and frustration. Finally, he swept his sleeves and departed, hurling one last threat over his shoulder. Su Wanyu. You'd better not regret this. Only after he had gone did father sigh deeply, retrieving a bamboo slip from a box in the study and handing it to me. Truth be told, when I inspected the lottery box that day, I found it filled entirely with your name slips. But your mother and I saw how hard you'd struggled to move on. We didn't want to shake your resolve again, so we kept it from you. I took the bamboo slip, my fingertips tracing the characters Su Wanyu. A chill suddenly shot up my spine. This handwriting was all too familiar, clearly written by Pei Heng himself. No wonder he reacted so strongly yesterday. Piecing together recent events, I could almost be certain Pei Heng had also been reborn. But why? Why did he want to keep me by his side this time? You error. Will you blame us? Father called out, his voice laced with worry. Snapping back to reality, I clutched the bamboo stick and turned toward the tea stove by the window. Rest assured, Father, your daughter won't make that mistake again. I lifted the stove lid and tossed the bamboo stick entirely into the flames. The charcoal blazed fiercely, instantly scorching the sticks until they curled and charred black. After lunch, Mother suddenly took my hand. Wan Yue, accompany me to the general's residence today. Lady Lu has acquired some exceptional Biluakun tea and has specially sent an invitation for us to sample it. I paused for a moment before nodding softly. I've been wanting to go out and clear my mind anyway. Truthfully, I knew this was less about tea and more about seeing that young General Lu with my own eyes. Though they'd arranged my marriage, they couldn't bear the thought of a blind match. They insisted I see him first to ease their minds. Upon entering the mansion, Mother and Lady Lu slipped into the inner hall together, leaving Lu Chen to lead me to the rear garden for a flower viewing. I was still pondering how to navigate this meeting when I lifted my gaze and froze. Before me stood a youth clad in an indigo-dyed robe, a white jade pendant dangling at his waist. He was so strikingly handsome and upright. It was as if he'd stepped straight out of a painting. Upon seeing me, his ears flushed crimson. He bowed awkwardly, nearly tripping over his own sash in his haste. Miss Su, how are you? He stammered, his eyes fixed on the ground, unable to meet mine. I couldn't help but smile. Young General Lu, there's no need to be nervous. I don't eat people. Only then did he lift his head. His clear eyes shone with astonishing brilliance. Yet his cheeks remained flushed, as if I had been the one to bully him. Lu Chen and I conversed for a long while in the garden, from poetry and literature to frontier landscapes. Though he stuttered at first, his eyes shone like stars when discussing military strategy, his true passion. Watching him grow animated, I couldn't help but smile. Only then did he belatedly flush, pressing a fist to his lips with a light cough before reverting to his usual reserved demeanor. From that day onward, this young General Lu began frequenting the Su residence almost daily. One day he'd bring a box of freshly baked almond pastries. The next he'd present several branches of camellias still heavy with morning dew. And the day after that, he'd arrive bearing exquisitely crafted trinkets. Though their betrothal was settled, in my presence he remained perpetually flustered. After exchanging mere words, he'd lower his head to adjust his already immaculate collar. Once, Yingxing couldn't resist teasing. Young General Lu never comes to our residence empty-handed. Hearing this, his hand holding the teacup trembled, spilling tea onto his robe. His ears flushed crimson as panic seized him. I was just... After stammering for a moment, he abruptly set the brocade box on the table and turned to leave. I suddenly remembered I have matters to attend to at camp. I opened the box. Inside lay a delicate pear blossom hairpin carved from white jade, exquisitely crafted. Beneath it was a flower pattern note, neatly inscribed, "The pear blossoms in my courtyard have bloomed, more beautiful than any year before." I smiled as I traced the elegant calligraphy. Suddenly, I realized how exquisitely charming these simple, uneventful days truly were. Days passed as usual, and the little trinkets Lu Chen sent gradually piled up on my dressing table. That jade hairpin carved with pear blossoms, the grass-woven grasshopper, the flower-patterned paper with rabbits painted on it. Each one reminded me of the faint blush on his ears when he handed them to me. That day, I went to the merchant house to collect several newly ordered pieces of jewelry. On my way back, I took a shortcut and happened to pass by the side gate of the Eastern Palace's courtyard. Suddenly, Ruan Li's furious voice came from inside the gate. "Didn't you say this rebirth was foolproof? How come Pei Heng is now completely obsessed with Su Wanyu? Hearing the words rebirth, my footsteps halted, and I edged closer. Ruanli never truly cherished Pei Heng. To her, this relationship was merely a mission she had to complete. How laughable. In my previous life, my wholehearted devotion was defeated by such a complete and utter deception. As soon as I stepped through the gate, Yingxing came to greet me. Miss, young General Liu is here. He's waiting for you in the back garden. I composed myself, gathered my emotions, and then walked towards the rear courtyard. Liu Chen saw me and, his face flushed, pulled a gold-embossed marriage contract from his bosom. I rewrote it 10 times. This is the neatest copy. I took the contract and unfolded it, nearly bursting into laughter. This wasn't a proper marriage contract at all, it was clearly a little narrative essay. From the love at first sight 3 years ago when our eyes met, to the pear blossoms we admired together just the other day. Every detail filled 3 entire pages. At the end, he'd even drawn a plump little rabbit, with the words "a vow of eternal love" inscribed beside it. Young General Liu, I said, deliberately stiffening my expression. Marriage contracts aren't written like this. The Ministry of Rights would never approve. He scrambled to snatch it back. Then, I'll go rewrite it right now. No need. I solemnly tucked the contract into my sleeve, lifting my eyes to meet his sparkling gaze. This marriage contract. I like it very much. My wedding to Liu Chen was set for the 6th day of the 6th month, the very same day as the Crown Prince's grand nuptials. That day, as I was sorting through my dowry in my chamber, a sudden clamor erupted outside the courtyard. Su Wanyu. Pei Heng's voice boomed from beyond the door, laced with suppressed fury. Open it! My fingers froze mid-motion. Before I could rise, the door was violently flung open. Pei Heng stood outside, reeking of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot. You? Do you truly intend to marry that Liu fellow? I instinctively took 2 steps back. Your Highness is intoxicated. Pei Heng's eyes lit up. He strode forward and seized my wrist. You care about me, don't you? I struggled but couldn't break free. My voice turned cold. Your Highness, please control yourself. Control myself? He chuckled softly, his eyes churning with emotion. You never spoke to me like this before. Let her go. Liu Chen's voice came from outside the door, cool and steady. He stood on the veranda, his brow bearing a sharpness rarely seen. Pei Heng narrowed his eyes, not only refusing to release me but pulling me closer into his embrace. Liu Chen, what position do you hold that you dare command this prince? Liu Chen's hand rested on his sword hilt. The marriage between this servant and Wanyu has been registered with the Ministry of Rights. The 3 letters and 6 rites have all been performed. Wanyu is this servant's betrothed. It is only natural that I protect her. Pei Heng sneered coldly. What is a mere marriage contract? If I were to petition His Majesty now to annul this betrothal, do you think this union would still hold any weight? Liu Chen's gaze darkened, his tone neither humble nor arrogant. If your Highness insists, this general is prepared to immediately request permission to guard the frontier. I shall exchange military merit for the Emperor's approval. His words made it clear, even if he were to die on the battlefield, staining the desert sands with his blood, he would protect this marriage. Are you threatening me? So what if I am? A sudden flash of ferocity flared in Pei Heng's eyes. Liu Chen's knuckles, gripping his sword hilt, turned slightly white from the force, instantly heightening the tension. My gaze shifted between the 2 of them. Your Highness, might I speak with you privately? Pei Heng hesitated, finally releasing his grip. Liu Chen frowned at me. I shook my head gently, signaling him to relax. After a moment of silence, he ultimately withdrew, leaving only Pei Heng and me in the room. The instant the door closed, The fury in Pei Heng's eyes faded somewhat, replaced by a complex emotion. What do you wish to say? I looked at him and spoke slowly, Your Highness. Do you recall what you said when you choked me last lifetime? Pei Heng stiffened, his gaze suddenly sharpening. You said, had you not switched name tags, Lear would have been my rightful consort. Now that your wedding to Miss Ruan approaches and your wish is fulfilled, what more could you possibly want? Pei Heng's expression darkened further as he staggered backward. You too. Yes. I met his gaze directly. I too have been reborn. So, living this life anew. I refuse to repeat the past. Shock and regret churned in Pei Heng's eyes, coalescing into an almost agonized struggle. I don't know why either. Every time I approach Ruanli, it's as if some invisible force manipulates my thoughts. I simply can't control myself. That night I was drunk. I don't know what came over me. It was as if something possessed me. I never intended to kill you. After you died, I regretted it for so long. I kept vigil at your spirit altar for 7 whole days. That day, drunk again, I opened my eyes and found myself back at the wedding ceremony. Do you know how happy I was? I specifically asked Father Emperor to let me draw for a secondary consort. The lot tube was filled entirely with your name. I don't know where it all went wrong. He rambled on, his words growing faster and his voice quieter, sounding less like an explanation and more like a confession. Finally, he stepped closer and grasped my hand almost pleadingly. These past days I've thought deeply and come to understand so much. Only now do I realize that though I'm grateful to Ruanli for saving my life, the one in my heart has always been you. Please give me another chance. I want to make it up to you. If you're willing, I'll go report to Father Emperor right now. Depose Ruanli and make you the principal consort. Once I ascend the throne, you'll be Empress, the most honored woman in all the land. Your Highness, I have already died once. I withdrew my hand, gently tracing the wrist he had once cut to bleed in my past life. So some things simply cannot be made right, nor can they be undone by mere reparation. Pei Heng froze in place, the light in his eyes slowly extinguishing. Finally, he turned away, retreating in a flustered, stumbling retreat. Outside the door, Lu Chen still stood silently beneath the eaves. Seeing me emerge, he sprang forward, gripping my shoulders as he examined me. Wan Yue, are you hurt? I shook my head, suddenly noticing his palms were drenched in sweat. I'm fine, I said softly, patting his hand. It's all over now. On the wedding day, crimson decorations lined the streets for miles. I wore a deep red bridal gown, the phoenix embroidered in gold thread shimmering in the sunlight. Halfway through the journey in the wedding sedan chair, a sudden commotion erupted ahead. Pei Heng galloped toward us in his own crimson wedding attire, his eyes bloodshot. Reaching us, he dismounted and blocked the palanquin. Come out and see me. Lu Chen reined in his horse immediately, blocking him with his sword. Your Highness, today is your wedding. Why are you here instead of welcoming the bride at the Eastern Palace? Pei Heng didn't even glance at him, his gaze fixed on the palanquin curtain. I know you can hear me. I lifted the curtain, the phoenix crown and pearl veil swaying gently. Your Highness, please return. I refuse to believe you could be so heartless. Pei Heng's Adam's apple bobbed, his voice thick with emotion. He took a step forward, halted by Lu Chen's sword scabbard. Your Highness, I believe I made myself perfectly clear that day. Please leave. With that, I was about to lower the curtain. Wait. Look at this first. Pei Heng frantically pulled a booklet from his robe, his voice trembling. Last time I told you, every time I got close to Ruanli, I felt I couldn't control myself. I finally know why. Yesterday I found these in her box. She isn't human at all. She's a demon. She schemed to get close to me. To control me. All just to become my official consort and complete her so-called mission. Pei Heng's voice cracked. The things that hurt you. None of it was my true intention. You. Come with me. I can give up the crown prince's position. I can give up everything. I only want you. I closed my eyes briefly. Then tossed the scroll back into his embrace. Your Highness. This changes nothing. Your Highness. A shrill cry pierced the air as Ruanli stumbled forward. Her hair was disheveled. Her face smeared with blood. Gone was her usual delicate demeanor. She looked as though she'd just escaped from a dungeon. Your Highness. You swore I was all you cared for. That you'd protect me forever. She threw herself at Pei Heng, clutching his sleeve. Please come back with me to marry me. I truly will die. Pei Heng's eyes burned with disgust and terror as he violently shoved her away. Get out of my sight. You demon. Ruanli staggered backward, suddenly bursting into maniacal laughter. It's all your fault. Su Wan Yu. Pei Heng immediately frowned. What's wrong? A cold gleam flashed from the Eastern Empress's hand as the dagger she held stabbed straight toward me. You! In the blink of an eye, Pei Heng violently shoved Lu Chen aside. Stepping in front of me. The dagger sank deep into his chest, blood instantly staining his wedding robes a brighter, more vivid red. Pei Heng staggered and knelt to the ground, yet still clutched Ruanli's wrist tightly, preventing her from drawing any closer. He looked up at me, blood foam spilling from the corner of his mouth. You. This lifetime. I finally protected you. Ruanli stared at her blood-stained hand and suddenly shrieked, No. Give me another chance. Don't. Her body began to twist and distort, turning transparent. Lu Chen shielded me behind him, drawing his sword, demon spawn. Ruanli's voice cut off abruptly. Her entire form dissipated like smoke in the wind, leaving only the blood-stained dagger clattering to the ground. Screams erupted from the surrounding crowd. Amidst the chaos, Pei Heng's hand slowly dropped, the light in his eyes fading bit by bit. Lu Chen stepped forward, his warm palm covering my eyes. Don't look. But I saw it anyway. The last words formed by Pei Heng's lips were I'm sorry. 10 days later, Lu Chen and I held our wedding ceremony anew. In the bridal chamber, he gently lifted my veil, his voice trembling with emotion. I've finally married you. I lifted my head to meet his wet eyes, gently brushing the faint redness at his temples with my fingertips. Silly. Later, we grew old together in love, our home filled with children and grandchildren. The Eastern Palace welcomed a new master, and the old story was never spoken of again. The end.